Deep within the Chernobyl exclusion zone lies a place of eerie beauty and profound danger, the Red Forest. Its name comes from the pine trees that turned a ghostly ginger brown after absorbing lethal doses of radiation from the 1986 disaster. But the Red Forest is more than just irradiated trees. It stands as a silent monument to the deadly deception that followed the world's worst nuclear accident. This wasn't merely a reactor failure, it was a conscious choice by the Soviet state to bury the truth, not just physically in contaminated soil, but from its own people in the world. On April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. What followed was not immediate transparency, but a suffocating shroud of official silence. For crucial hours, then days, Moscow remained quiet. While firefighters battled an inferno emitting unfathomable amounts of radiation, Soviet authorities, according to historical accounts, systematically suppressed information. This immediate cover-up would set the stage for a prolonged campaign of deceit, with catastrophic consequences for millions caught in the invisible wake of the disaster. Perhaps the most damning secret was that Soviet officials knew the real, terrifying radiation levels months before admitting them to the public or even to their own citizens. Internal reports and measurements, as later revealed by historians and declassified documents, indicated the true scale of contamination was far greater than what was publicly acknowledged. Instead of immediate, widespread evacuation and warnings, state media downplayed the event. This deliberate concealment meant populations lived, worked, and children played in areas saturated with lethal radiation, unknowingly enduring irreparable harm while the truth was guarded in official vaults. The Red Forest became an unintended visual metaphor for this hidden truth. It wasn't just a place where trees died, it was a vast, dangerous zone where the physical evidence of the catastrophe was undeniable, yet officially downplayed. Its transformation, visible even from afar, signaled an environmental devastation that the state desperately tried to control and minimize in its narratives. The decision to leave people in harm's way was directly tied to the refusal to acknowledge the full environmental and human impact, symbolized by this starkly mutated landscape. The conscious choice to sacrifice people to maintain silence is perhaps the darkest aspect. Hundreds of thousands of liquidators, soldiers, firefighters, and civilians were dispatched to the site, often with minimal protection and inadequate information about the true dangers. Their valor was exploited by a system more concerned with political stability and image than human life. Delayed evacuations for cities like Pripyat, just kilometers from the reactor, cost untold lives and health. The state's narrative painted heroes, but history reveals victims of bureaucratic arrogance. This fatal bureaucratic arrogance wasn't an isolated incident but a systemic issue rooted in the Soviet apparatus. The RBMK reactor design, known to have flaws that contributed to the accident, had its problems suppressed for years. Warnings from engineers were often ignored or dismissed. After the explosion, the same culture of denial and fear of admitting fault drove the extensive cover-up. This wasn't just a failure of technology, it was a failure of governance, where a rigid hierarchy prioritized secrecy and political narrative over the safety and well-being of its citizens. The Soviet veil of secrecy eventually began to unravel, not from internal transparency, but external pressure. Days after the explosion, elevated radiation levels were detected in Sweden, hundreds of miles away, forcing Moscow to finally make a public, albeit partial, admission. Even then, the full scope of the disaster and the internal knowledge of its severity were downplayed. International observers and the global media began to probe, chipping away at the carefully constructed narrative, but the true depth of the deception would take years, even decades, to fully emerge. The legacy of Chernobyl is not just the exclusion zone or the ongoing cleanup, it's the profound scar left by deliberate deception. The choices made in the hours, days, and months following the explosion, driven by bureaucratic arrogance and a conscious disregard for human life, amplified the tragedy beyond measure. The Red Forest stands as a stark, enduring reminder, a monument to the trees that died, and the truth that the Soviet state desperately tried to bury within its irradiated soil, leaving lingering shadows of distrust and untold human suffering that resonate to this day.